Welcome to Autoline this week, where we're coming to you from the world headquarters of General Motors in downtown Detroit. The reason we're here is we're going to be talking about the 100th anniversary of Chevrolet. And that's why my special guest this morning is Chris Perry, the Vice President of Global Marketing for Chevrolet. And we'll be talking about why global is in that title. But also joining us today are Mark Phelan from the Detroit Free Press and Frank Markus from Motor Trend Magazine. Great having you all here, and especially you, Chris. Thanks for taking the time to be with us on Autoline.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
100 years. That's a phenomenal statistic to be able to talk about.
Absolutely.
Not many brands get there. Do you use that in your marketing? I mean, how do you go out and tell the world, that you're 100 years old now, and what kind of benefit is that from a marketing standpoint?
Right. We've been using it in our marketing for the last couple of months just to reinforce the idea that we've been around for 100 years. We sponsor the Dream Cruise here in Detroit. As part of that 100-year celebration, we're launching some web apps and some websites to get people engaged in the 100-year anniversary. We're having open houses at our dealerships. There's a great event in Korea where we brought all the recent Chevrolet owners together, and they made a bow tie out of their cars, won the Guinness World Record for the biggest bow tie ever. We have some advertising around it, so it's really more than a day celebration, it's a several month celebration.
And just in case anybody doesn't know, the bow tie, of course, refers to the shape of the Chevrolet logo.
Absolutely.
How big was the next biggest bow tie?
I think it was a brand in Europe that did something out of their logo, but we surpassed that with our event in Korea.
Now, what is the line that you have to walk between playing up the fact that you're 100 and that you've got all of these iconic old models, right, but not getting tied up in selling the past and convincing people that you're a brand that speaks to today's challenges?
That's a really good point. What we're really trying to do is reinforce the fact that yes, we've been around for 100 years, we have the heritage, we have the culture behind us, and all the innovations that we brought to the consumer, but also that we're continuing and looking to play a role, a significant role in the industry as we go forward. The Volt is probably the best example of that. That's I think the press has all recognized that it's a game changer in what we brought to market. And just today we announced the Spark EV will be brought to market in 2012. So,
and the Spark's a tiny little car that you don't sell in America yet, but you will be.
Which we will be. So it's a combination of reinforcing the heritage and all the successes we had in the past, but reinforcing the fact that we're looking forward and looking to play a role in the industry going forward.
Small cars are an interesting, part of this program too, because Chevrolet's history has been a little checkered on that front, but it's true. All pretty good news right now. And I mean, how do you? That's kind of hard to play on the history of the Vega or the Chevette or the Corvette. But.
Right. Particularly in the U.S. here, we're known, quite honestly, as big trucks, Silverado, full-size SUVs, performance vehicles with the Corvette and the Camaro, and not so much with small cars. But we've proven with the Cruise that when we get a great vehicle that can compete against the competition, we can do well with it. Right now the Cruise is the best-selling compact car in America. This month we'll sell our 1 millionth global vehicle. In China we sold 187,000 last year. So we're getting into the game there, and of course we're launching the Sonic, or the Aveo in some markets as we call it. It's already launched in several markets. We'll be launching it here in the U.S. Right now. So we're kind of expanding our portfolio and expanding how people can interact with the Chevy brand.
So what are the historical correlations between the Bel Air, the Impala, whatever the big old Chevrolets people may be thinking about, and vehicles like the Cruise and the Sonic that you're introducing now? How do you draw a connection for buyers?
It's a challenge. It's really just reinforcing, like I said, the heritage. We've had so many people come up to us and say, my first car was a Chevrolet. I remember we just did a great online video that you can see and look for. It was a story about a guy who remembers his dad's '65 Impala SS, and he had it for 20 years, and he loved that vehicle. And he remembered he and his brother in the back seat, sliding in the back seat when his dad's cruising around. And unfortunately, his father had to sell it in '85 because of financial burdens. And his two sons went out and found that vehicle in Montreal, of all places, restored it and brought it back, and we were able to videotape the whole event. And it brought tears to their dad's eyes. It was like, oh my gosh, that's my car. That was 25 years ago when I got rid of it, but it's still his car. And that connection to the American consumers, they recognize the role that Chevrolet has played in the culture of America, and all the songs that we've been a part of, all the movies we've been a part of. And so tapping into that from a marketing standpoint, it's powerful.
Is that why Chevrolet is using the tagline right now, Chevy runs deep? Is that really tying in with being around for 100 years?
Yeah, it ties in a couple places. One is certainly the heritage but also we run deep in the values that we represent. We run deep in the commitment we have for the innovation going forward. There's a lot of connotations to it, and we'll continue to evolve that tagline as we go forward.
And Chris, you started talking about Chevrolet in other countries, China notably.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit more about the global aspect of the brand, because many Americans think that Chevrolet is just an American brand. I think a lot of people know that it's been in Latin America. They know that from the Chevy Nova, that the Chevy doesn't go, that sort of correlation. But it's really taking off, of all places, in Europe and Asia right now.
Exactly. We were just talking, Chevrolet has been actually in other countries since the 20s. We started with a factory in Europe, I think in the mid-20s. We started building Chevrolets in Brazil in 27, I believe it was. And so in some countries, that's their home brand. We've been in Brazil for 65 years, but in Korea, we've been there 6 months. But from a global standpoint, to answer your question, is Chevrolets are sold in 140 countries around the globe. And interesting enough, this year in our centennial year, will be our best sales year ever in our history. And your point, a lot of people don't recognize that 60% of the Chevrolets are sold outside of the United States.
Are you able to sell any North American product in Korea, or is that all domestic GM-DAT product?
Actually, the Malibu that we'll be getting here in the U.S. in the spring of 2012 is launching right now in Korea. So we're really going to, not only from a global sales perspective and so forth, we're also going from a global platform perspective. We have the Cruze here, which I already mentioned is sold globally. The Malibu will be a global vehicle for us. The Sonic, Aveo in some markets, is a global vehicle. The Spark is doing well in a lot of markets that we will be getting here late in the year. Announced yesterday the Colorado pickup truck, the midsize truck. We'll start in Thailand, but we'll get a version here in the U.S. So we're now, it's interesting because I think we've always been distributing Chevrolets globally, but we haven't done a great job of managing it globally. And I think that's the initiative going forward now.
And how do you, obviously in places like Brazil, the brand has been there for almost as long as it has been in America. People know what a Chevrolet is. How do you, communicate to people in the new markets? Korea, Russia is becoming a very big market for you. That's relatively new as well. Yeah. What do you tell them Chevrolet means?
What's interesting is people recognize Chevrolet as an American iconic brand, and that's how we're going to market it. But what's great, people around the globe recognize the values that America stands for. They might not appreciate the politics, but they recognize, the opportunistic attitude that we have, the independence, the innovation, the freedom, all those great values that all humans appreciate, that are tied quite closely to the American culture, are also being tied to the Chevrolet brand. So we see ourselves as a global brand from America. Probably not unlike Coca-Cola, I would say.
Do you have to tune the Chevrolet message for different parts of the region, different regions of the world? Would you use Chevy runs deep in different languages, for example? How cohesive is your marketing message?
What we've tried to do is develop what are the common values and personalities of the Chevrolet brand, regardless of what market we compete in. And we've been able to identify those. It's the same ones that we've been promoting here in the U.S. for years. It's, our owners and our target audience tend to be family-oriented and community-minded. They appreciate good value, but also expressive styling and good performance. And those characteristics are part of consumers universal. And so that's, we showed some advertising today to the press that are visiting with us of different commercials from around the globe, and they're in different languages, from the Middle East, from Mexico, from South America, and you see a common theme running through all of them. We just need to now formalize that a little bit more, see what assets we can share. Is there global commercials that we can develop that not only run here in the U.S., but in other markets as well?
I'm
I think there's great opportunities.
I'm curious as to, because I know that a lot of the Chevy products that are sold globally are produced globally. They're not produced necessarily here.
Yep.
But the brand is very American. And do you find yourself having to say, hey, made in Korea or whatever, as part of the message? Because I know like when Toyota and Honda and those guys were really growing up in the U.S., everyone's like, oh my gosh, Japanese quality is what you want. So we're not going to necessarily play up the fact that we're building them in Kentucky or Ohio. Right. But over there, do you face different cultural mores as to, how you tread that line?
Not so much. It seems like the global consumer recognizes that, it's a global market now. And these vehicles are made all over the world. The parts are made all over the world. What's most important for them is, does it meet their needs? Does it going to help them through life's journey and what they want to accomplish? And that's what we're focusing on. Like I said, the expressive styling, the value, and the quality of the products.
I would imagine that advertising the fact that Chevrolet has been around for 100 years as you go into new markets would be a huge advantage. Because in, let's just say, China, so many new brands have come into that market. How does the consumer know which is really one that they can rely on? And if you can advertise the fact we've been around for a century, I would imagine that would help, console customers into thinking, okay, this is a good brand to go with.
Oh, absolutely, that certainly helps. I think American products have certain cachet in China, and the fact that we've been around 100 years, we have heritage all over the globe. That's certainly a part of our marketing strategy.
Does 100 years have resonance then in China? I mean, one of the things that it's such an old culture with such deep roots. I would have thought 100 years, just another new kid on the block almost. Is it something that you can actually talk about there?
Well, in terms of their culture, 100 years is a drop in the bucket, right? But in terms of products that are being brought to market, I think the heritage and the commitment we've had over the years is a help. It's not the main message by any means. We really want to talk about, like I said, the product attributes and how we meet the needs of the consumer. And what we try to do in each of our markets is really focus on the consumer needs, put the consumer in the center. And we like to talk about Chevrolet is the hometown brand, and no matter what hometown you're in.
Well, speaking of China, though, one of the best, most well-regarded foreign titles there is Buick. Is your product lineup such that you're not competing with Buick? Or do you have any overlap there? Because that was kind of one of the problems in the 60s and whatever, is all the GM brands were fighting each other in the U.S.
That's one of our challenges here as well, is making sure that we have clear identification of what the brand stands for. We call them swim lanes, making sure that they all have a purpose for being, not only in who the consumers that we go after, but the characteristics of the vehicle, what segments it competes in. So just like we're differentiating that pretty well here in the U.S. between our four brands, that same challenge will present itself in China, but we think we have a good roadmap.
Chris, let's assess Chevrolet in the U.S. market right now. You guys have been gaining more recently, gaining market share, some strong sales. Instead of asking you where your weaknesses are, where do you see opportunities to grow the brand, or what do you have to work on now?
Well, our biggest growth this year has been with the Cruze. Like I said earlier, it's the number one selling compact in the U.S. We're very pleased and happy about that. Very competitive marketplace. We know that with the new products coming from the competition, we'll challenge that. But I think we have a product we think we can win with. The new Sonic is a great opportunity for us. We really haven't played in that small car category before, and the press has been very complimentary of the vehicle, the ride and handling and the fuel economy that it provides. That's pretty exciting for us.
And does it make a big deal? The Sonic's going to be built in the U.S., is that right? How does that help Chevrolet?
Yeah.
Pardon?
In Michigan.
In Michigan, no less. Right.
With
UAW labor, no less. So that's the first
right.
time we've seen a subcompact car that potentially could be profitable manufactured in the U.S.
Right. The only subcompact car made in the United States.
Is that a car that you can play that has resonance broadly, or is that just something that appeals to people in the Detroit Tri-County area?
I think it resonates differently depending on what U.S. region you're talking about. I think here in the Midwest, absolutely, they pride themselves on vehicles. In California, that isn't as much. They're used to buying the Japanese products and the Korean products. So the great thing about that vehicle is we feel strong that we can go head to head with what they're offering from a product standpoint. Without any doubts. I mean, we feel good about it. A lot of our dealers, in fact, have started to buy competitive products and putting it on their showroom. And so when customers come in, say, hey, you know what? Take ours for a ride, take theirs for a ride, and tell me which one you think is best for you. And more often than not, we're going to win that battle.
And the reason that you've got better small cars now than you did in the past is in part because of the globalization, isn't it? Because the small cars are the great majority of what Chevrolet is going to sell in the rest of the world if it's successful. So you're engineering them to a different standard than did in the past, and you've got more volume that you're spreading the costs over.
Yeah, we are definitely a global brand when it comes to engineering. And like the Sonic, the Aveo in a lot of markets was engineered. The home base for engineering was in Korea. And we do that with some of our products, or we look to tap into the engineering capabilities around the globe, making sure that it's appropriate for that market, but also fits with other needs around the globe also. And we also recognize in the US that was one of our weaknesses, right? We were known as a large truck brand, but I think we recognize that we can't be successful going forward relying just on pickup trucks and full-size SUVs. And so we've got into the car game, with both feet. This time next year when we have the Cruze, the Sonic, and the new Malibu, and the Spark just hitting showrooms, that's a pretty strong car lineup that Chevrolet hasn't seen in years. And I feel confident we can put those 4 products against any other lineup in the industry, and we can compete pretty well.
Bring us up to date on the Chevrolet Volt. As you mentioned earlier, it's a game changer. It's a significant new technology to the market. But it's come under a lot of criticism because the sales numbers are so low. I think the critics ignore the fact that it's been sold in very few markets and that the production ramp-up's been very slow. But explain where that is and where you hope to take that next year.
Yeah, we're actually very pleased with the results of the Volt. That's one of the things that's a bit confusing for me, quite honestly, because we launched it in just 7 markets, in 7 states, and we've been slowly ramping up. It's now in, I think, 25 states. By the end of the year, we hope to be in all 50 states. So a majority of our dealers have yet to receive their first one. And dealers are telling me that, on average, the vehicle stays about 3 days in a dealership. In terms of it gets there, they PDI it, and it's out the door. So from a volume standpoint, we think it's been a big success. But more so than that, it's the halo that it's playing for the overall Chevrolet brand. Our research shows that the more familiar, the more aware you are of the Volt, the greater your consideration, the greater your opinion of the Chevrolet brand. It brings a halo of innovation and fuel economy that even if we sold half as many as we have, would still be a home run for us.
Well, explain that a little more fully in this respect. I know the Corvette has always been the halo for the Chevrolet brand, and it sells in very small volume. I'm not sure it makes any money, but I know that Chevrolet or General Motors have always justified it because it did bring people into the showroom just to look at it. And if you can get them in the showroom, you got a chance at selling them something else. Is that what the Volt is doing now?
Absolutely. We have people coming in curious about the Volt, looking at it, taking a test drive, and finding out that the Cruze, for their needs, is a better option. And they drive out in a Cruze, or they drive out in an Equinox. Both vehicles that are selling very well for us right now. And we're blessed that we have really a couple iconic, halo products. Like you mentioned, the Corvette, that's pure, fantastic performance, right? There's not another sports car, again, putting it up against anything else in the marketplace. That's a fantastic vehicle. The Volt is a fantastic vehicle. Camaro has been hitting it out of the park as another iconic vehicle. So, we see ourselves as a mainstream brand. We have a lot of customers that have varying needs, and we're filling out our lineup, so to speak, to meet those varying needs.
The Volt, with its electric system, is sort of one end of the spectrum. Chevrolet is looking at other types of electrification as well. You mentioned a battery-powered Spark next year. The Malibu, when it goes on sale early next year, is going to have some electric systems to improve fuel economy. Is that right?
Yes. So we call it e-assist. It's kind of a mild hybrid technology. But one of the things that, and we've been talking to the press about this week, is this idea of around the globe, people have different needs, different propulsion needs, really. Alfred P. Sloan said there's a different product for every purse, a product for every purse. We see it as propulsion for every purpose and purse. And so we will continue to invest in electrification, from pure electrics like the Spark EV, the Volt, you mentioned the mild hybrid on the Malibu. We have hybrid Tahoe and pickup truck, all the way through, diesel engines, small gas engines. We have a lot of heritage and investment into hydrogen vehicles. So we're kind of, looking at all aspects and seeing at how we can fill out our lineup and meeting the propulsion needs across the globe.
How are you going to market that e-assist? Because as you well know, your hybrids don't sell well. And this is not just a Chevrolet problem, this is a problem across the industry. With the exception of the Toyota Prius, none of the hybrids are really selling. I'm not sure exactly why, but how do you crack the code, or what are you going to do to try to crack the code with e-assist?
I think the difference with the e-assist is because it's a mild hybrid, the expense isn't the same. So the premium that you pay for a fully engaged hybrid isn't there. What consumers really want is better fuel economy. They're not really as concerned about how they get it, and that's where we're calling it the Malibu Eco. That's where that plays a role of, yes, it's a little bit more expensive, but the fuel economy is such that it justifies itself.
Yeah, the economics pay off in the 4-year lease cycle or whatever, I think, on that one.
And it's the new technology that are also driving the interest in that vehicle.
And is there perhaps a reason to avoid using the word hybrid altogether? Because once you've said hybrid, you've got people thinking Prius and a whole different set of expectations that are not what you're selling them with the Malibu Eco.
Right. That's one of the things about the explosion of the various propulsion options, is it starts to get a bit confusing in people's minds. Even with the Volt, people say, okay, it runs on battery, but it has a gas engine, and how does that work? Isn't that a hybrid? And it's really, what is the benefit of the consumer? And when we marketed the Volt, and we'll do the same thing with Malibu, it isn't so much about the technology, is what is the benefit that the consumer gets out of it. So with Volt, it's electric power for 35 or so miles, and if you need more, it kicks into gas and you extended range. With the e-assist Malibu, it's about the fuel economy and the performance that you get out of that vehicle. So we're going to try to get away from the technology and more turn it on what's the benefit that the consumer gets out of that technology.
And of course, you're going to put a diesel in the Chevrolet Cruze, or you're going to offer a diesel.
Right.
Talk a little bit more about that, because none of your domestic competitors, none of the Japanese, the Koreans neither, are going with diesel engines. Only the European brands offer them in the American market right now. What do you guys see out there that you want to stick your toe in the water with a diesel with?
Well, that's exactly it. We kind of want to stick our toe in the market. Cruze has been doing very well for us. We have diesel Cruzes elsewhere in the world. We felt it was an opportunity to kind of get in and see what the market might hold for it. Could be very successful. It might not be well received, but we're willing to take those chances. I think that's one of the things going forward that we're looking to do is if we see a potential opportunity, let's invest in it. Let's see where it takes us.
I can tell you that our mailbag is filled up with a lot of people who have rented diesel Cruzes in Europe, and they're like, we want that here. So
because you're going to be able to deliver what, over 40 miles to the gallon, I would imagine.
Yeah, we haven't announced that yet, but we think we'll be able to perform pretty well.
And the price is going to be what's really key on that, because quite often diesel with the emissions, costs almost as much as a hybrid. Although I think on really small ones like that, you get away from the selective catalytic reduction, emissions of gear, and makes it a little bit more.
When we get close to that, I'll come back on your show and we can talk about the price and the fuel economy and all the benefits of the diesel Cruze.
Payoff horizon.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we do see with the brands that do sell diesels, though, is that Volkswagen, BMW, the German brands, there's a passionate body of owners that they have that love diesels. They stand in line. They happily pay more. Is that something that is unique to the German brands, or is it something that you think that a Chevrolet diesel can tap into as well?
We think it's something the Chevrolet diesel can tap into as well. We don't believe that this is going to cannibalize Cruze sales. We think we're going to be bringing in a whole new market in to purchase this vehicle. Because I think there are people who like German engineering or German diesel, and there's some people who are just looking for diesel but wouldn't mind having an American car. And I think that's where we're going to benefit.
And not too many of them owned a Chevette diesel.
Yeah.
That's right. Right.
Yeah. Which had nothing to do with today's clean turbocharged diesels.
Yes.
We're down to the very end here. But Chris, any closing thoughts about Chevrolet, its 100th anniversary, and where you hope to take the brand?
Well, it's been exciting to be part of this 100-year anniversary of any brand, particularly such an iconic brand as Chevrolet. It's just been personally enjoyable and fun. like as you mentioned earlier, a lot of consumers don't know the scope of the Chevrolet brand. They see us as a nice American brand, and the fact that 60% of our sales are outside the United States, the technology that we're bringing to bear in the market. That's the exciting thing about it is, we've been pretty successful for the last 100 years, and I think the best part about it is how we see the future coming at us and all the opportunity that it presents, and the product lineup that we have in place to capitalize on those opportunities. That's really the exciting part about Chevrolet today.
Well, I think anybody would agree that for any consumer product to be around for over 100 years is an amazing accomplishment. And, so congratulations to Chevrolet for making it to the 100-year mark.
Thank you.
Really impressive. Chris, thanks so much for sharing your time with us today.
It was a
much
pleasure.
appreciated. Really enjoy it. And of course, Mark Phelan from the Detroit Free Press, Frank Markus from Motor Trend. Great having you guys here as well.
Thank you.
And thank all of you for having tuned in, and join us again for Autoline this week.